And so I'm super imperfect, and sometimes I feel like a terrible mom. But I'm trying to teach her what I know as I'm learning it. I already have a lot of hope for her. You know, she wants to be fluent. She wants to only speak Inupiaq. She said, you know how people learn Spanish and they know Spanish and they speak it everywhere? That's what I want to do. I want to do that with Inupiaq. And the only time I'll speak English is at school because they're not going to know Inupiaq. I'm just like, gosh, that's so badass.
Yeah.
I just love that she's like that. 2nd grade, I was being beat up for being Native. You know, Grandma Rita Blumenstein, she's Yupik, the traditional healer. I love her quote. She says, when we heal ourselves, we heal our ancestors, our grandmothers, our mothers, our children, and future ancestors. I really believe that. And I feel really blessed to be living in a time that I feel that shift happening.
The introduction of organized religion in Alaska around the 18th and 19th centuries had a heavy influence on the Alaska Native people. Ayyu explains her family's connection to the introduction of the Covenant Church in Unalakleet.
They were a big focus of my thinking because what I was doing was I was traveling back through time, reflecting on the life of my Ayyu, my namesake, my grandma's mom, and the life that she had to have been leading at that time because she was growing up in that changing time. The Covenant Church had come to Unalakleet. They were Swedish missionaries. They came to Unalakleet and Yakutat. And I was just kind of like contextualizing her life with like my own life experiences. Like, okay, so she was born a few years after they first came. So thinking about them coming to the community, they come and they're newcomers and it's a different climate and it's a different space. And so they're probably just easing in and trying to get the lay of the land and kind of get their foothold a little bit. And then they start to bring people in, and through the language barriers, they start to evangelize and start bringing people into this organized way of thinking about our place in the world. And so I think about like her parents are there during this time where things are shifting. There's like a new kind of way of thinking about our world happening. And just from my own research, I know that over the next 30 years or so, up until about 1915, they shifted into much more oppressive ways of evangelizing, starting to degrade our ceremonies, our songs, our dances. Through oral history, I know that in the 1910s-ish, that the missionaries, in making a statement to our community, went around in broad daylight and they stomped in our karigis. We had 4. In reading the church publications, I've read the missionaries' journals when they were in Unalakleet, but I've also read the church publications kind of talking about what their mission work has been in Alaska and other places. And, they're very congratulatory, self-congratulatory about the ways that they were successful stopping our singing and our dancing. So for me, it was this kind of exercise in understanding Ayyu's life, how she was living through a time where understanding our place in the world was not only shifting, it was becoming clear that our way wasn't right and not good enough. And so it made me think about, how did that make her feel about herself? And when she became a mom to my grandma and her brothers and sisters, how did that affect the way that she was parenting them? When I think about if with my own children, as a survival mechanism, I had to teach them that they needed to speak a different language than me, they couldn't look like me, they couldn't smell like me, they couldn't eat like me, they couldn't think like me. If I had to reject myself in order to parent my children so that they could be successful in this world, I think about what's the collateral damage on your spirit, and what is it about that experience that transmitted to my own grandma? Because that story that I shared earlier about understanding my relationship with my mom It's also all of the mother-daughter relationships in my family, hers and my grandma and Ayyu. And, it goes back. It's really complicated in my community because the Covenant Church is very strong and they have amazing people. They have really amazing people both leading the church, carrying on church teachings. There are also some not awesome people, not in Unalakleet, in some of the other communities. Some who I feel are bad seeds for sure still. But it's complicated because understanding the brilliance and strength of our ways has been put to sleep, while this other way has kind of superseded. And so, right now I'm a graduate student and I'm wrestling with what's the question that I need to be asking myself, where I can be putting my energy and my thinking and my research to its best use to help my people. And that's one of the things that I'm thinking about, is what are the impacts of colonization on my community? How does it continue to show up? In a lot of ways it shows up in the things that we don't do, But we've been doing a lot of work with the Covenant Church. Curtis Ivanoff, who's the superintendent for the Covenant Church in Alaska, is Inupiaq from Unalakleet. And I know he's also very passionate about wanting to know how the church can help shift and restore the things that they know they've taken from us. So thinking about how to do that in a really good way that's healing and restorative. I think about that a lot. I mean, you think about it, 120 years ago, groups of predominantly white men were coming together in spaces to make decisions about natives, about our education, about separating us from our lands and our rights, how they would enact kill the Indian to save the man here in Alaska, making these decisions. And when I think about something that actually I would like to do is to monetize the human and financial capital that went into the endeavor to separate us from our knowledge.
Compensated. Is that what you mean?
I mean, there were people who were hired. There were people who were sent to our villages. Our people were sent to boarding schools. You know what I mean? Like, there's a tremendous amount of resources that went into separating us from our families, from our communities, from our ways of life. Human and financial capital that went into that. I personally feel that for justice to be done, no less than equal to, but more than likely greater than, that must be spent in restoring it. I mean, an apology is an important step, and I don't want to diminish it, because, I mean, it's easy to say that something's not good enough or not enough.
The work to recognize and reclaim our native way of life is a multi-generational effort. With each generation comes a unique set of challenges.
These younger generations are just so fabulous and amazing. And, I've had conversations with my mom where she's like, oh my gosh, you're doing so much more. You're going so much further. You're doing so much better than I was. And it kind of drives me crazy because it's like, there is no better than. There's no further. There's no greater. The equation doesn't work like that, because the only reason that we can do what we're doing now today, the only reason that our kids can live and breathe their pride in who they are, is because of all of these struggles that our different generations have taken on. And those struggles have looked different at different times based on, the forces that we're up against. And so for me, what I think about as a professional in my own career, in my own life, especially because I faced my own mortality, where it's like, oh my gosh, I literally cannot die right now. I have a lot of to do. So having that kind of experience of like, okay, no, there's too much. I have too much left to give. I think a lot about our responsibility to push as far as we can so that our kids can take it even further. I'm so excited.
Over the course of her work and over the course of her life, Ayyu has found personal healing in revitalizing Indigenous knowledge and practices.
Relayed to us through a good friend of ours who's Seneca. He was doing work in the YK Delta with elders, and he was sharing with us how, in talking about the lies that we've been fed our whole lives, there was this elder who stood up to speak, and he was saying, you know, I'm at the end of my life, and I'm just now starting to understand the lies that have been fed to me about me and our people my whole life. I'm just now starting to understand that. And while I'm starting to understand that, our children are waking up from this lie. They're waking up from this lie, and they're waking up hungry. What are we going to feed them? That's that infusion of understanding and grounding ourselves in who we are. And that was why when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I made the decision that when I became well, I would mark that return to health with my tatlugún. And almost as soon as I had decided that I would do that when I was completely well, I decided I wanted to do it myself, because it would be a reminder to me that we are so much stronger than we even know that we are. And even the things that scare us the most are things that we can overcome in beautiful ways, especially in being who we are. So after going through chemo, and then I had surgery, and I went through radiation, and after a period of time had passed where the chemo could work its way out of my system, I had my last kind of infusion, and I was just sitting there at the oncology center and really feeling some kind of way. Oh my gosh, I felt every emotion in the whole world. It was like all of the energy of everything I had been through over the last year just like really boiled to the surface. And I swear I could have gone home and stitched it into my face that moment. Like I felt so ready. Like, okay, it's time. And I was like, okay. Hold up. Okay, hold on. Okay, clearly now I'm ready. Now I'm ready to do my tatlugún. So now I need to go through my process to prepare for that. And so I knew that I wanted to get a traditional tattoo of medicine on my right arm, because I knew I would be doing my own tatlugún. So I went to go see Sarah Whalen, who's Inupiaq. Her family is from Unalakleet, which I didn't know until we were there. And so she put Ayyu, my Inupiaq name, our tundra tea, on my arm. The way that healed, it was clear to me that my body wasn't ready. I still had chemo running through my system, and so it took a while. And so fast forward a couple months, it was like the stars aligned. My mom, I brought her up from Washington. Some of my sisters who've been with me through everything and really lifted me up in the hardest times, they were all there. And I was able to go and get my kids. And so it was like the stars all aligned for this one night to do the women's ceremony, to do my tatlugún. I went to go pick up my kids to bring them over to my house. My mom was making fried red tacos with dibdoo. And my sisters were already there smudging the house. And it was just really beautiful. So I went and picked up my kids. And driving back, my oldest son said, "So what's it going to look like? Did you decide how you're going to do it?" Because they'd been seeing me draw all these different designs for months. I said, "Yeah, I've decided I'm going to do 2 lines." And my second oldest son said, "Why 2 lines?" And he said, "I've been seeing you draw 3 lines. Why are you going to do 2 lines?" It was so personal. As I was going through chemo and as I was worried about whether or not I was going to make it through, I was reminded every day that our time here is fleeting and that it's our responsibility to make the most of our time here. As I was going through treatment, I made the decision I was going to do 2 lines to represent our past and our future ancestors, to remind myself that I'm only occupying the space between, that I'm a connection between our past and our future ancestors, but that I'm not even really here, right?